You are now tuned in to higher frequencies. We do this frequently. Turn your radio station to E3 for that decency. Listen to great music and the latest movement. Safe listening for anyone that's tuned in. Who you waking up to? Anna Deshawn, Q Crew and Friends. It's that real talk. Online radio with the spins. You caught up in traffic, frustrated. Just check in with E3 to shift your vibrations and get elevated. That's queer radio done right. Choose to be yourself. That's the only way to live life, and that's how it's done here. Just know y'all tuned in to the greatest. Ain't no competition. We ain't worried about the other stations. Check.
What's good people? You know, this is your girl, Anna Deshawn, right here on Wake Up with Anna and Friends, only on E3 Radio, your number one stop for queer radio done right. And I'm excited today on the show. We've got Lex in the building. What's going on, Lex?
What's going on? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So fam, if you're not familiar who Lex is, let me tell you a little bit, okay? She's a community member, she's a techie, and she's a history lover. And I'm excited to have her today because a few months ago, right, we were all talking about the Tulsa Massacre and the 100-year just remembrance of that incredibly tragic moment in history that so many of us did not know about and just left out the history books. Well, Lex's family is a part of that narrative, and I'm excited to talk to you, and I'm so grateful that you were down with sort of sharing your family story with us today.
Again, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk about it some more. Any chance I get to chat about this and spread knowledge, but also learn more is a great opportunity for me.
Yeah, I'm just so grateful for that. So family, here's the deal. So I'm sure some of you all saw some of the documentaries, some of the stories, read some of the articles, right? I think OWN did a beautiful job of telling the story in that 2-part series, which you can catch on YouTube now. And Lex's great-great-grandparents, okay, John and Loula Williams, they were the founders and the owners of the Dreamland Theater that was on Greenwood Avenue. It was a huge theater too, by the way, like filled 750 people, okay? They were entrepreneurs. Lex, how did it feel when you found out like that was your people?
It was very miraculous. I think that for me growing up, like I knew about my immediate family. So like my mother, my grandparents, and a little bit about the Tulsa Massacre and just Black Wall Street in general. Yeah. And so to me growing up, like I knew it was a huge deal, but I didn't understand how big of a deal it was until I started learning more just about the idea of what that meant at that time, especially in the 1920s, for just Black wealth to exist is miraculous. And then there's a whole town of it. There's many towns of Black wealth and Black people who had ownership over so many things and lived very like abundant lifestyles and in self-sufficient communities. So for me, it was really cool to learn more and explore more about it. And as I get older, it just puts a lot more heaviness to it in a good way. Yeah.
That's a lot of heaviness, right? So your great-great-grandparents, the theater was one of the businesses that they owned, but it wasn't the only one, right? You talk about they had an auto body shop.
Yeah, that's right. So they also had a confectionery, which is kind of like a candy store, a soda shop, but there were a couple of those in Greenwood in general. And they also had an auto body shop. So they were the first family to own an automobile, the first Black family to own an automobile in Tulsa and Greenwood. And during that time, because of like segregation, no one would serve them if they had to get the car fixed. So them being inventive and innovative, what they did is they said, okay, we'll start our own because we're not going to be the only people with a car in the future who's going to need this service. And we can create this auto body shop to not only like work on our cars, but also our community whenever they need it.
First off, I can only imagine how good they was looking riding around and they in their car, you know what I'm saying, is the first. I mean, I'm sure like we get excited when we get a car, you know what I mean? Let me go to my grandmama house, let me go see my family. I can't imagine them rolling around in Tulsa, going to see all their people, going over to, what was it, the Tulsa Star, I think was the newspaper, and being like, yo, look what I just get. I think it's just so badass, especially given the time and what Black folks were having to deal with during that time. And we know the outcome of what became the Tulsa Massacre.
Yeah, that's very on point. And one of the famous pictures that it's like all over the internet, lots of historians use it, is actually a picture of them in the automobile. It's my grandmother, my great-great-grandmother and great-great-grandfather, and then my great grandfather, WD, who ended up he ended up leaving Tulsa and coming back, and was also a huge part in the development of continuing how to grow Greenwood and the Black community post the Tulsa riots.
Oh, tell me more about that. Tell me more about what it meant to come back. I know I saw an article where it said that the theater was reopened. Was that your family? And I can't imagine all the feelings that came along with that.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's something I think about too, because especially going to Tulsa and going for the centennial, that's one thing that popped in my mind all the time, is like, how did they even like find the will to just continue and like rebuild? But they did, and so many businesses did, and it was very, very amazing that they were able to do that and really just like, you know, build from the ground up and start again. So so my great great grandparents, they rebuilt the Dreamland Theater. They also had another theater that was not in Tulsa, so they were one of the lucky ones who still had income that was generated from other businesses outside of Greenwood. But for the most part, you know, there were so many people that had to not only rebuild their businesses, but also rebuild their homes and the things that were looted from them, from their personal belongings too, which was very difficult. But at the end of the day, they banded together, and that's exactly what they did. That was eventually upended. That progress was upended again around the like 1960s, 1970s. Actually, correct myself. I think it's like the 1960s when you have the like highway revitalization going on across America, and at that point, a giant highway was built through Greenwood that basically just like divided the whole entire community, and businesses again were legally like decimated. So, but again, they rebuilt, and so at this point now, there's still plenty of businesses in Greenwood, not necessarily as much as many as had existed when it was at its prime in the 1920s. But they rebuilt, and that's the spirit of Tulsa and of Greenwood and of the Black community.
And of so many Black communities across the U.S., I think the spirit in which our ancestors had that resolve, this unwavering desire for more, and the courage that it took to do that. I mean, to see the pictures is one thing. I got into Lovecraft country, and so, you know, seeing it in that story was another thing. But I tried to put myself there in that moment, and I can't imagine the amount of just immense fear I would have had, and hatred, just pure hatred for those and their ancestors that committed this horrific tragedy that really changed the face and the wealth, right, of every descendant from that area, which leads to the conversations around reparations for those communities and for folks like your families. Like, what does that conversation look like?
That's a huge question and conversation too, that it's ongoing. I mean, there are committees and people in Tulsa that have been fighting for reparations since the 1950s, 1960s, and continue to. I think it wasn't until maybe like early 1990s that Congress is actually able to hear testimony from people who had been in the Tulsa riots to explain to them what had happened in order to really like push for reparations. That unfortunately still has not happened yet, and there's a really interesting monument that was built down in Greenwood, towards the edge of Greenwood, and it has a listing of all the businesses that were burned and all the homes that were demolished too during the Tulsa riot, and it also lists out the amount of money that they had asked for from insurance, from the insurance companies, that was denied. And I think like the smallest number on there was maybe like 30,000, and the highest number was my family and another family, so it was upwards of like maybe like 2 to 3 million, and none of that has ever happened. And that's lots of bureaucratic reasons, obviously, and one of those being that the insurance companies refused to pay out any of the damage costs because the incident was labeled a riot and not a massacre. So little intricacies like that have really like put hiccups into the process of asking for reparations, or like receiving reparations, I mean. but the push is definitely still going and still ongoing. So like I said, I know that especially with the centennial, the idea was that the Chamber of Commerce and the state of Tulsa would be able to really hear this cry again and understand the importance and the reason as to why reparations are very, very critical right now. And they were before, but even so right now too, especially for how long it's been since this has happened, and the refusal to acknowledge that this was what it was a massacre, and all the damage that it cost, not only at that time, but like through generations in the future to come. But yeah, the conversation is still ongoing, and the fight is not over. There's definitely a lot of fight to continue that for sure.
Well, I'm here and I'm putting up all the energy for all those who are fighting actively for that type of justice, because I do not believe that there can even be any type of reconciliation or beginnings of peace until some type of form of reparations is made. When you think about $2 million in 1920, that right there, let's talk about generational wealth wiped out. That is an immense amount of money today, and the possibilities for what it could have been, and I mean, it was a theater today. It could have been multiple theaters around the country tomorrow, right? And they had already started on that road. So, Lex, thank you for sharing your family story with us today. If there's anything you want to share with the good people about Tulsa, is there any way folks can support the movement or anything else you want to share? Please drop it on us right now.
Oh, definitely. Thanks for having me. And yeah, in order to support the movement, I'd say continue learning about stuff, especially about Tulsa and Greenwood. But more specifically too, just about like Black wealth and Black communities from that time, because Greenwood was one of the most notorious like incidents. The massacre of Greenwood was one of the most notorious incidents that happened. And people of Tulsa still remember, but there's so many other communities that happened to. So continue learning, continue educating yourself. I do that all the time. And I'm always still learning about this kind of stuff. Another thing too is any ideas and help with like supporting the reparations movement. I had a conversation the other day with someone just to put some reflection on it. Basically, is that, you know, after the World War II and the Japanese internment, any Japanese American got paid reparations, but yet Black people still have not been paid reparations for so many things that have happened to them. Yeah. So continue to fight, continue to spread the knowledge, continue to put pressure on elected officials, those who make those power moves that will be able to support the movement as well. And also, yeah, just continue to support your Black community and understand that like Black wealth is a thing. It always has been a thing. It never ended, even if, you know, we've been put through the ringer, and we've been really like stubbed out as a community and forgotten about in many ways. Just understand that it's happened before and it can happen again when we support one another.
That's right. We deserve, okay?
Absolutely.
Family, we deserve. And our ancestors have shown us that tenfold. Lex, thank you so much. And thank you for your family and their courage. And
thank you again for having me. Thank you for having me and hearing me out. And I look forward to continued conversation.
Me too. I'm here for this. Family only on E3 Radio. I'm telling you right now. This is it. So keep it locked. We got more music on the way right here on Wake Up with Anna and Friends. Stay close.